So today I want to share something from the introduction of my book, which is called Feminism Has a Branding Problem. Hello and welcome to the first episode of Sunday School. This is my new mini series that I'm going to be dropping every week on Sunday, where I share a little snippet, a little interesting insight from my book that was released this week called How to Hack the Patriarchy. I'm sure a lot of you baddies are familiar with this because you've probably already purchased a copy, but for anyone who's new, my book, How to Hack the Patriarchy, is about 20 different strategies that we can use to exploit the patriarchy's loopholes and beat the system at its own game. Because the patriarchy is honestly, unfortunately, probably not going to be dismantled in our lifetime. And it was the World Economic Forum, if I'm not mistaken, that did research and found that it won't be until the mid 2100s when we would actually reach full gender equality. So we're stuck with this garbage for a while. So why not find the loopholes in the system and use it to our advantage? Because patriarchal power, like all power, runs like a software. And once you understand its code and where its bugs are, and trust me, there's lots of bugs because it was a software written by people who were not that smart, you can easily hack it. And that's the reason why I call it How to Hack the Patriarchy. If you love the podcast, you're going to love my book even more. And it is my love letter. This book is my love letter to every woman who's had enough, who's fed up, who's tired, who's depleted, who's underpaid, overwhelmed, underappreciated. If you've been on social media, if you've talked to a man, unfortunately, in the last few years, you probably noticed that there's been a shift in the way that people view feminism. There's a stigma attached to the word feminism or the word feminist because people associate it with some angry, blue-haired Starbucks barista who people think is just angry at the world and smelly from using natural deodorant and just unpleasant to be around. And she's a man-hater. This is essentially propaganda from different evil forces in the world, like red pill content, anti-woke culture, general misogyny, and just other evil forces that have ruined what feminism means and turn it into a joke, turn it into something that people can't take seriously anymore, turn it into something that people are embarrassed to be a part of. Because one of the most effective ways to delegitimize a social movement is to make it embarrassing and controversial to be a part of it. I remember a few months ago, there was a trend on TikTok and Instagram. I can't remember the song that was like part of the trend, but it was a song and people posting a short clip of them, a short video with text over it saying, like the sun went up this morning and I'm just glad that I'm pretty, I have a job, I have good friends, blah, blah, blah. What I'm saying is really lame, but it's basically just listing off things about your life that you're happy with. And so many women, so many of them posted, I'm not a feminist. Like, I'm sorry, why are you proud of this? The reason you're even able to have a voice on social media is because of feminism. So sit the fuck down, Megan. Like, what? Like, and the majority of them were white women. I don't think I saw a single woman of color posting this. So it really shows a lot of layers of privilege that played into this. That really opened my eyes and showed me, wow, it be your own people. It be women. It'd be women who are against this too. And that's how far this anti-feminism movement and this branding problem has come. Because when you can turn women against each other, you can turn the people within that movement against each other. then great, you've really succeeded in delegitimizing it. And the thing is, everyone is born a feminist. Everyone is born a feminist in the same way that everyone is born not being racist. But culture, media, patriarchy, propaganda, all these things tell people that they are not. And a lot of men want to create a divide among women to basically replicate the same way that they are divided, that they are isolated because they are insufferable and they are victims of the world. So that's the branding problem. Now, what can we do? What can we do? We're faced with this issue, this stigma of being a feminist, and there's so many different options floating around. Some people are saying we should opt out of the system completely. Just don't associate with men, don't associate with patriarchy. But that doesn't really work. How can you opt out of a system that didn't ask for your consent to begin with? You can't just opt out of patriarchy. You can't. The patriarchy shapes your life every single day. You can try not to leave your house, but other than that, you can't really opt out of the system. You can't refuse to engage with men, because then we turn into that's kind of the female version of being an incel. You're going to have to encounter men in your life, unfortunately. So you can't just completely opt out. You also can't really do nothing. Most people can't bear to feel powerless, and doing nothing just accentuates that powerlessness. But we also can't really fight and be loud and be aggressive in the same way that men are, because then we're dismissed. We're told that we're emotional. We're told that we're man haters. We go back to being that stereotyped as the, angry blue-haired feminist. And the thing is, many of us are too focused on fighting. And being loud and obnoxious is a masculine specialty. Of course, there was a time when our basic needs weren't even met and women had to take to the streets and fight and yell and scream and demand basic things. And unfortunately, in third world countries like the United States, a lot of women's basic rights are also being repealed, like reproductive rights, access to birth control, access to abortions. So yes, in those cases, really the only option is to go out and fight like hell. But when we're focusing on more higher level needs, for example, when you're in the workplace, when you're working with a mansplainer, when you're working with people who might brush you off, might underestimate you, might interrupt you, overlook you, we can't use the language of men. We can't be loud and obnoxious. Because we're women. We have so many more tools at our disposal. We literally don't have to be loud and obnoxious. We don't. That focus on being loud and obnoxious and fighting like men distracts us from the fact that our presence and our being have inherent value to begin with. Okay, we're in the system that was designed by goofs, but that doesn't mean we're powerless. Okay, so we have to use the system's loopholes and blind spots and the cracks in the system against it. We can beat the system at its own game, because the system was not designed with the end in mind. The system was not designed thinking long term. The patriarchy is a short-sighted form of instant gratification made by men who had Venus envy. That's what it is. So it's based on a shaky foundation. And when you see that the system also hurts men, that's how it shows that this is such a short-sighted system, because it's hurting the people that it was supposed to provide power to. Obviously, there's different layers of classism, racism, all sorts of things that come into it as well. But what we have to do as women is we have to navigate through the system in a more sneaky and more creative way. Because a lot of the time, you can get things done a lot better when you're operating under the radar. When you're being a little bit quiet. Sometimes when you're looking like you're following the rules, but you're breaking them in silence. So we have to hack the patriarchy in two ways. The first way is by unlearning a lot of the crap that we've been taught to keep us powerless and small, like being humble, like feeling guilty, like performing emotional labor for everyone, like feeling silence and not letting people sit in silence. So we have to unlearn the crap, and we also have to identify the loopholes that we can exploit. And that's exactly what my book is all about. It's doing these two things and walking us through how to do these two things in 20 different ways, 20 different strategies. Because as women, we already have all the tools that we need to succeed. Everything we need is already within us. But we have to unlearn a lot of crap and peel through a lot of these layers to get back to that core and understand and be in tune with those tools that we already have. Does that make sense? And the first step to that, like I said, is unlearning. Unlearning guilt, unlearning shame, unlearning emotional labor, unlearning the practice of taking everything personally. And it's not until we unlearn these things that we can have a fresh set of eyes and look at these loopholes and understand how to exploit them. Because the risk with not unlearning is that we think we are powerless, we internalize that powerlessness, but then we also externalize the blame and become victims. I am powerless because the world made me this way. When you externalize things and blame other people and other forces, you've taken that power away from yourself and you've put it into something else, into the world, into other people, into things that can't even take responsibility for that thing to begin with. So they're never going to turn around and solve it for you. So it all comes back to understanding our own power and using that power in a way that's going to get us what we want. Because remember, getting what you want is not bad either. That's another thing we have to unlearn, that you're selfish when you get what you want. So this is how I open my book. This is part of my introduction and sort of setting the scene for my 20 patriarchy hacks. The book is a revised and updated version of my first 20 girly laws of power from my podcast that I've rebranded as Patriarchy Hacks, so I don't get sued by Robert Greene, the author of the 48 Laws of Power. And to be clear, this is not the same as my episodes. I've updated it significantly. I've added new examples. I've supplemented it with new information. And so it is a better, stronger, more informative version of my first 20 girly laws of power. And in the book, you're going to learn how to use the patriarchy's loopholes to your advantage. You're going to unlearn a lot of that conditioning that's making you small and powerless. You're going to learn how to stop letting guilt and shame control you. You're going to learn how to no longer feel depleted in your relationships. You're also going to learn how to apply psychological techniques to get whatever you want. And to also understand human nature so well that you can always lower people's defenses and always win. All right, class, before I dismiss you, just a reminder, my book is available on Amazon in both physical format and ebook format. If you use Kobo or another e-reader that uses an EPUB file, I've also made that file available. I'll leave everything in the links below because Kobo keeps taking down my book. So I just have the EPUB file available for purchase. Everything is going to be in the description. And if you love the book, please leave an honest review on Amazon because that's what encourages the Amazon algorithm to push it out to more people. So I hope you love the book. I hope you get a copy for yourself and enjoy it. I created this book as a sensory experience for you. I wanted the reader to go through this sensory experience. There's poetry, there's quotes, there's poetry written by me, poetry written by actual poets, and even things that capture the essence and the contradictions of being a woman. You'll see that there's some contradictory things in there. You'll see that there's some complementary things in there. So I created this book mainly to be consumed as a physical copy because the way I've laid out the pages, I've put poetry in certain places, I've put quotes, I've put interesting things. I'm not going to give everything away on certain pages. It's all intentional. And you get that full experience through the physical copy because that's how everything has been laid out. But of course, on the digital copy, you'll also get that experience. But as a physical book reader, that's how I laid it out. That's how I envisioned it. All right, thank you all for tuning in. Class is dismissed. I'm not going to say love you, bye, because that's inappropriate for a teacher to say to the students. I'm going to say it anyway. Okay, love you, bye.